Welcome to my first episode on YouTube. I'll be posting tips and tutorials for photos every single Friday. So for my first tutorial, I'm going to be sharing with you a basic edit on Photoshop. Don't forget to click below and subscribe, and let's go ahead and get started. Here. So with this first photo, the very first thing I do on every single photo, and I do this the same every single time, I come up here to filter at the top. You're going to hit filter and sharpen. You want to sharpen your image on every photo you take. And then what you do is you come down here to unsharp mask, and you want to have 60%. You want to be your amount. Your radius, you want to have, I'm sorry, that's wrong. You want to have 20% as your amount, 60% as your radius, and 0 on your levels. Okay, these numbers can be the same on literally every single photo. At least that's how I do it. Hit OK, and that'll just sharpen up your image just a little bit. It doesn't make it look fake. It doesn't make it look crazy. It just gives it a little bit more crispness in the areas where it's focused. This has obviously got a lot of blur in it, which we love, and we're focused right here. Okay, next thing that I do is I come into adjustments here, okay, and you're going to click right here on your curves. So this little graph with the curvy line in it, click on that. And what you're going to do is you're actually going to scroll down so that you can see the entire square in your little box here. There we go. And you click right directly in the middle of it. Just click on it. You don't have to raise it or lower it. Now, when you click up on this, that's going to brighten up your image, okay? Which obviously I don't want my photo that bright, or it can darken your image, right? So that middle area is just, it's going to either brighten or darken your image. This particular photo is pretty bright already, so I always brighten up my image a little bit. This one I probably won't go too crazy with because it's already pretty bright. So I'll pull up the level just a little bit. I think I like that. And then you're going to go halfway between this bottom piece and this middle piece, and you're going to click on it right halfway through, and you're going to pull down on it to give yourself some nice contrast. So you're creating a very soft S-curve right here. You don't want to be getting too crazy with the S-curve. So if you come back up here to your layers, you can click on this little eyeball and it will take away what you just did so you can see what it looked like before and what it looks like now. See, it just brightened it up, and you could even just leave your image like that. Dark, bright, okay? So that's it for the curves. Now, if I want to kind of give my picture a little bit more moodiness, I'll come back up to my adjustments here, and I'll click on levels. So this little one right here, click on it, and you're gonna pull, this will be your blacks in your photos, the highlights in your photos, so the shadows, highlights, and then these are your gray tones. So this is everything in the middle. So if I want to make my photo just a little moodier, maybe a little bit darker, I'll grab that gray level and I'll pull down on it just a little bit. And I really like how that looks. So again, I can come up here and I can click off of it and back onto it to see which one I like more. Off, on, okay? I'm really liking how that looks. So now what I'll do is I'll zoom in on my photo here, okay? And I'll look at her face and see, okay, are there any little things that I need to remove? Now, when you use this little Band-Aid tool over here to remove things, you always have to make sure you're on your background layer. So you click back down onto your background layer, come over here to your Band-Aid, and you want to make sure that your cursor is as small as it can be around the piece to remove it. That's going to give you the best results. And to make your little circle bigger or smaller, you use the bracket button on your keyboard. The right one makes it bigger, left one makes it smaller, okay? And that's true for everything. If you're using a brush, if you're using whatever it is you're using. So I just go through and kind of remove anything on there that I maybe don't want. Okay, there we go. All right, so like I could post it exactly like that. I want her skin to be a little smoother. So there is an action that I use that is called Mama's Powder. This action they no longer sell. Isn't that the saddest thing you've ever heard in your life? So I know that there are tons of actions out there. You can just get online and Google skin smoothing Photoshop action, and you can go through and find something. If you guys know of something, please comment below for everybody else. If you know of an awesome action that is still for sale that you can use. I'm going to try to find one, you guys, that works really well so that I can share that with you, because I know it's like hard. I'm sharing this action with you that you can't even buy anymore. But anyway, the way that actions work is you load them into here, and it's really easy. And I'll make a video, and you can even Google it, but I'll make a video eventually about how to load actions into your Photoshop. It's very, very simple. But you open up your little folder. So you click here to pull it down. Oh, I'm sorry, this one, Mama's Powder. You click on your action. So the action I'm going to use for this one is powder. And then you hit the little play button. And for this particular action, the person created it to work with this brush that I don't have, but it doesn't matter. So I just hit OK. And then I'm going to zoom into her face here. Okay, and I'm going to make my circle a little bit bigger. And then what you can do is you can come up here and look at your opacity. If I start doing this and it's way too intense and it looks really fake, I can turn down my opacity to make it just a little less crazy. So I'm going to start looking at how it looks. And you know what? I think it's actually very subtle, and I like how it looks. So I'm just going to go through on the flatter parts of her face. I'll never cover this area because it makes her look way too fake. So I'll do on the sides there. Turn that down a little bit. And you got to be careful on the chin too, because the chin, that can make or break it too. So if you do it and it, like let's say I do this whole thing and I'm like, I don't really like how that looks. You can come up here to edit and you can step backwards and remove it and kind of do it again. So maybe I just want to do just the side of her chin a little bit like that, okay? And you know what? I'm liking that. It's a little bit airbrushy looking to me. So instead of erasing all of it and going up and changing my opacity, what I'll do is I'll come over here to my layers, click on my layers, and I'm already on the action right here, Mama's Powder. So I can come up and change my opacity right in my layers. So let me pull it down to about 76. And I think I like that a little bit better. It doesn't look quite as airbrushed. And you can play around with it. You can see the difference between 21%, 70%. I think maybe I like about 50 to 55% on that one. That's really good. Okay, so I'm really liking how this picture looks. The last two things that I would do on this, there's an action that I use on a ton of pictures. It's an action for newborns. It's part of this Clean Newborn set right here, which is by Marissa Gifford. And I'll put that here so you guys can Google that and find it. The Clean Newborn set. I use her set for all of my newborn photos, and I use a lot of her actions for my other photos as well. So she has an action called detail sharpening, and it creates a little brush that allows you to sharpen just certain parts of the image. So when I zoomed in, I noticed that my focus is not, it's like on this piece of hair right here. And her eyes are pretty in focus, but I want them to be a little bit sharper. So detail sharpening in the Marissa Gifford newborn set, hit play, and it tells me this is going to flatten my image, which means that all these layers that you could see before, those layers are going to be gone. So you will no longer be able to adjust those. So before using this particular action, you want to make sure that you like how your picture is looking. Of course, you can still adjust things later, but just make sure that there isn't anything that you did before that you want to change. And I'm going to go ahead and hit continue because I'm happy with the way that it looks. And I'm going to come over here to her eyes, and I'm just going to swipe right on her eye, and it's just going to sharpen it just a little bit to make it a little more focused, okay? And as I was doing that, I noticed her little leg down here, and I noticed that her little leg has some bruises and stuff on it. So I'm going to go into my layer, and I'm going to go to background. And I can either use my little Band-Aid thing to remove it, or I can use Mama's Powder. Now, one thing I forgot to mention about Mama's Powder, which it may be true for whatever action you find that's skin smoothing, but for this particular action, you have to be on the background layer in order to use it. It's not going to work on the other layers. So I'm going to use my Mama's Powder again, and I'm just going to go through and smooth out those little bruises on her leg. Okay, I'm going to zoom in so I kind of can see what I'm doing here. And then, of course, when I zoom in, I'm like, I see a little spot on her face. So I'm going to come back down to my background layer, come over to my little Band-Aid here, and I see this little white spot that caught my eye when I was looking at her leg that I wanted to remove. There we go. I know, it sounds a little picky, you guys, but honestly, that's just kind of what happens. As you start editing, you'll start seeing things. And at first, when you first start editing, you might get carried away a little bit. It's really easy to do that. And so you just learn as you go. Now, as I'm looking at this photo, I'm actually going to brighten it up a little bit. And that happens to me a lot. Like I'll get to the end of my edit and I'll go, you know what? I want this photo a little brighter. So if you remember, you go into adjustments and you hit your curves, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing I did earlier. I'm just going to brighten it up just a little tiny bit, just a tiny little bit, and I'm going to pull down to give a little bit of contrast, and I don't want too much. There we go. Okay, so a lot of times I'll come back to my layers here, and I'll come into my curves, and I'll hit the little eyeball so I can see, okay, that's what it looked like before, that's what it looks like now. Sometimes I'll actually look at it and go, you know what, I actually liked it better before, but this time I do like it better, brighter. Now, you can leave it just like that. That's all you have to do, okay? Or you can add a filter or an action on top. There is an action that I love right now, and I go through different phases. Whenever I shoot for people commercially in my studio, I never use a filter over the top of an image because I want the colors to be as true as possible. But whenever I want to give the look some moodiness, or the photo some moodiness or a certain look, then it's fun to use actions. So this Greater Than Gatsby set that I bought, there is an action in the Greater Than Gatsby set that I'm loving right now that is called, it's a matte finish, and it's called Hardy Boys. And it gives a really rich, deep, kind of a moody look to the photo. And see how it matted out all that black? That's a little bit too matte for me, so I'll come into my layers, and just like I did before, it's already on there. I come up to my opacity and I'll turn it down just a little bit. Then I like to come over to my eyeball, as you know, unclick it, click it. And it's very much so a personal preference thing. You know, on this picture, I almost like it better without, but I'm going to turn it down just a little bit and see what I think. The opacity before. Yeah, I think I like it with just a little bit of a matte. Now, I'm done with this photo. So how do I save it? The first thing you need to do is you come up to your layers here, and you need to flatten your image so that it will get rid of all of your layers. If you leave your layers there, it will not save as a JPEG. It will save as a Photoshop file. So you have to go in and flatten your image first. Then you go in, File, Save. That's just going to save it in the exact same spot where it was before. And then you can close out that photo and you're done with it.
Thanks, guys. That's it. That's your basic edit in Photoshop. So tune back in next Friday. I'm going to be sharing my favorite iPhone apps and ways to get beautiful pictures with your iPhone. Go follow me on Instagram at WeScoutPhotos, and I'll see you back here next Friday.